Okay, so boom. This is not one of my favorite songs that I have released. However, I do still love this song. And if I didn't love it, I wouldn't have released it. So let's get into it.
I've been hurting, but with purpose. I've been working on myself. I've been looking in the mirror like queen, ain't nobody else. Better than you, hotter than you, better than you, hotter than you, better than you, hotter than you. Girl, you top two, and you not two.
Kinfolk, what is good? It's your girl Ken, and I welcome you to another episode of the Keys and Seeds podcast. As we are continuing to have conversation about my discography as an artist, this is part 2 of me diving into my singles specifically, and I'm excited for every episode. And so I'm excited this episode, of course. But before diving into the conversation for this episode, for this week, I first and foremost want to apologize for this episode being late. There's no excuses, but there's a number of reasons as to why this episode is late, but that's neither here nor there. At the time of me recording this episode, it is the night before Valentine's Day. I'm not sure if this episode is going to be out on Valentine's Day, but by the time you see this episode, by the time you hear this episode, by the time you tune into this episode, rather, I hope that you had a good Valentine's Day, whether you had a Valentine or you were your own Valentine. Know that self-love is the best love, and more importantly, Jesus loves you. And so Jesus is always your Valentine. So choose him always, okay? Because he's always choosing you. Furthermore, this past Sunday was also Super Bowl Sunday. And of course, there has been a lot of discourse about Super Bowl Sunday, more specifically, the halftime show. And that's also neither here nor there. That is not what this episode is about. But if you would like to know my personal thoughts and opinions on the show, meet me in the comments. I would love to just have conversation with you all in general. And we need some more engagement. We need some more shares, some more likes, some more views, some more comments. And so also, just to do some housekeeping before jumping into this episode, please make sure you follow, share, like, subscribe, all of the things. Leave a review, leave a rating for the podcast. It is greatly appreciated. And as I am taking time to reflect on my discography as an artist, right? I want to know your thoughts. Let's go down memory lane together. A lot of you all who tune into this podcast, you are aware of the pod and you are aware of me because of my music, right? But if you're here and you aren't familiar with my music, please make sure you take the time to tune into the music that we are discussing and having conversation about here on the pod. And also, as another housekeeping item, as we are talking about the music, please make sure you tune into my Bandcamp specifically. A lot of the songs, a lot of the releases that I am going to be discussing, I'm going to be discussing everything that I've dropped up until this point. And a lot of it, some of it, most of it, or I wouldn't say most of it, but there are some releases that I have released, throughout my discography that aren't on a Apple Music, a Spotify, a Tidal, wherever, right? And so you can tune into my Bandcamp. That is where you can find everything that I have ever released. And so if you support me, if you support artists, if you support independent artists, if you support artists who make good music, intentional music, please tune into the Bandcamp. Any amount is appreciated. It is essentially a pay what you want platform. And so, of course, I have to plug the Bandcamp as I'm also talking about the music. But without further ado, the 4 singles we are going to be discussing in this episode is Blunted, Better, Ritz, and Rekyndl. So now, without further ado, let's get into the conversation. Okay, so I have my notes here, and I think this episode is going to be a lot more structured than the previous episode, right? In total, this is episode 36, and I feel like I'm still trying to find my groove and my voice. So bear with me, y'all. And so I'm actually very excited to get into this episode because I have some notes that are detailed yet concise. And not only do I have some background context to provide for you all as it relates to the conversation about these singles specifically, but I also have some prompts that I am going to be responding to as we are going to be reflecting on each individual single that we are going to be discussing in this episode. All right. So without further ado, with that said, background context. Okay. So All But Rekyndl was released in 2021. And when I reflect back on 2021, I remember that year as the year after COVID, right? As we all know, 2020 was COVID. I graduated college during all of that in May of 2020. At the end of 2020, I experienced a heartbreak. And because, college is out the way, I was in this space of, okay, school is no longer my, full-time job. It's not taking up as much, space in my mind anymore. I'm young. I don't got no kids. I know that music is what I really want to do because at this point, as I've said before, I've been doing music or at least pursuing music publicly out loud, releasing music. I've been doing that since 2018. And so at this point, it's now 2020. I'm like, okay, boom. Like I'm about to hit the ground running with the music. Although the world was on lockdown and I was on lockdown right along with y'all, I did not let that stop my grind, my hustle, especially as an artist. And so in 2020, I actually dropped not one, but 2 projects. I dropped Capped in August, I believe. And then I dropped Quran in December, actually on Christmas. And we're going to get into those projects specifically later, right? But I say all of that to say, going into 2021, I'm like, okay, boom. Because of COVID, I was not able to actually walk the stage as I graduated from college, right? Like I wasn't able to do that in 2020. However, we did have the opportunity to have a graduation ceremony in 2021. And so I remember walking the stage in 2021, a year later, right? And it was this feeling of, okay, now this chapter is officially closed, right? What's next? And long story short, I moved to Atlanta in September of 2021. Atlanta is one of those cities that I always had like on my mind as far as, moving to pursue music. And so I took that leap in September of 2021. And once I made that move, I just remember around that time, I just felt as if I had more freedom, right? More autonomy as an individual, right? This was my first time essentially in some type of way, shape or form, right? I had roommates at the time, but at that time, that was my first time actually like moving out my mom's house and having a place, on my own, right? As I'm contributing, rent. But I also too had a lot of creative freedom around that time. And so just to provide that background context, because I had just dropped 2 projects in 2020, but that also was the energy environment that I was kind of in 2021. I more so was like, let me just drop these singles. Let me just drop just to drop, as I am still finding my sound and I have this creative freedom as an artist, right? Like, as an artist, right? Like, we as artists, you know, speaking for myself and other artists, of course, right? A lot of us, we're very intentional about the art that we create and the way in which we present that then to the world, right? But a lot of times we, or at least speaking for myself, I have to remind myself that although there's a method to the madness, and, you know, we have to, you know, consider marketing and, you know, all of the things, right? Like, sometimes, like, especially when you're still growing your audience, like, girl, just have fun. Release the music. Stop sitting on it. And so at that time, that's kind of just the space that I was in as far as me releasing music. And so that's the background context. And now we about to get into Blunted specifically, which is actually one of my favorite songs that not too many people are familiar with. And we about to get into why. Why a lot of y'all not familiar with it, but why is also actually one of my favorite songs, like, out of everything that I've ever released. As I'm going to be reflecting on each song specifically, I have some prompts that I responded to help me have a little bit more structure as I'm, you know, having these discussions, right? So the question is, what inspired this song / what's the message or feeling behind it, and why did I feel like I needed to create this? Immediately I'm like, smoke song. And I don't smoke anymore, but I just remember liking the beat because it just had this whimsical, how this beat makes me feel is when I feel when I'm high, you know, type of feeling. That's what it gave me. And so when you have a beat like that, a beat that gives you that type of feeling, you don't want to overthink the vibe. You don't want to overthink, you know, the lyrics. Also, more specifically, the song itself, knowing the direction that I wanted to take with that song, right? It immediately made me think of a song that I love that is a little bit more underground. So not too many people are familiar with this song, but if you know, you know. I have Rekyndl tattooed on me, for those who do not know. But again, if you know, you know. During the time, you know, Rekyndl, you know, ASAP Mob, you know, was coming up and popping, I was a big Rekyndl fan. And shout out to Kyndl because he actually produced No Complaints featuring Jada. But long story short, Kyndl has a song called I Wanna Smoke. And I love that song. When I first heard that song, I ran it into the ground simply because I just love how the song makes me feel, right? Like, I love listening to artists like Kendrick, but I also love, you know, or, you know, I like listening to artists like Kendrick because of, you know, the depth and, you know, the substance, right? I was a big Ab-Soul fan before I was a big Kendrick fan, believe it or not, actually. But I also love artists where it's like, it's not always a deep message, right? Like, sometimes I just want to vibe. Like, one of my favorite genres actually is chopped and screwed music, right? And so, I don't know, I just really love that song in particular by Kyndl, and I love, you know, just the vibe and the feeling that I get listening to that song. And so that also was kind of like the inspiration that I was drawing from as I was creating Blunted. And it's one of my favorite songs, specifically not because it's a smoke song, but because it's more of my melodic, chill type of songs, right? Like, I think the way in which a lot of people view me or perceive me as an artist, they see me as someone who is like this lyrical, you know, femc, right? And even as I call back to the previous episode, right? Like, a lot of my music first coming out was a boom bap, you know, type of vibe. And I think I do take myself a little too seriously sometimes as an artist. But with Blunted, right? Like, I love this song because it literally was just a song that I was vibing out on. And again, I just love the feeling of it. It just feels very melodic and whimsical and just all of the things. And so not spending too much time, on this song in particular. That's one of the reasons why I love this song, why it's my favorite song. That's how it came to be. And I also have always wanted a 420 song. So I'm like, yeah, I got me one now. Whole time now, I don't even smoke anymore. But I digress. Two lyrics in particular in this song that stood out to me: smoke another blunt to take the pain away. And the other is, niggas try to blow my high, but promise I ain't going. I can't take the bait. And these lyrics stood out to me because even though it's a very like whimsical, vibe out, type of song, if you really pay attention to the lyrics, I'm very transparent about the fact that I'm smoking because I'm trying to avoid my feelings. I'm trying to run away from my pain, right? And I think that's significant because I'm still a very introspective type of person, and you will always pick up on that in my music. And I also think it's important to point that out because a lot of 420 songs, if you will, aren't that transparent. Right? Like, it's more so just speaking on the fact that I am engaging in the act of getting high. I Want to Smoke by Kinayata, for example. I love that song, right? But if we really sit and think about it, a lot of people who smoke, y'all, I'm saying y'all because I don't smoke no more, but we, as in, when I used to smoke, right? Like, y'all, we, however you want to flip it, right? A lot of times smoking is used to attempt to fill a void, right? A lot of people who still smoke and they smoke every day and they smoke all the time, like, where are you running from? Also, too, going back to what I said about niggas try to blow my high, but promise I ain't going. I can't take the bait. Like, what that made me think of is the fact that a lot of times, if you're high already, other people can't blow your high, right? But let's say if you're sober, something that you probably wouldn't have responded to when you was high, you now quick to react to, right? And I really just want to bring that up because I feel like, and excuse the camera shakiness, I want to bring up that fact or, that point to make the point of saying, I think a lot of people also can't not smoke. And that's a problem. There's people who have to smoke before they eat. They got to smoke before they leave out the house. You know what I mean? Like, if you feel like you can't face your own self, your own emotions, if you can't face other people and their emotions without being high, that's a problem. And question yourself, why you are choosing weed as something to attempt to fill a void, knowing that it's not going to fill the void. No judgment, because that was once me. But yeah, so I just thought that was important to reflect on as I now have the perspective that I have. And then last but not least, how does it connect or contrast with the other songs in my discography? And I wrote in my notes, the previous release was Quran, which was very vulnerable and melodic leaning, and it was still lo-fi. And so I think it was a perfect transition, right? Like, it wasn't a song that was different from what I had previously released, which was Quran. And I also put on my notes, I plan to speak on it soon, but I was very open at this time about internal wrestling and my vices. So that's also a common theme. And what I meant by that is, as we are on the subject of, vices, right, and using things in an attempt to fill a void, right, I was very vocal on Quran specifically, which again we will get into later. I was very vocal about what my vices are, or what they were at that time. Now I have new vices, still working on them, but that is Blunted. And again, one of my favorite songs, just because of, the vibe and, the sound of it. But yeah, would I make a song like that today? No, because I don't still smoke. But I still love the song for, what it was. And the reason why a lot of people are not aware that a song like Blunted exists as part of my discography, if they are not familiar with my Bandcamp, is because it was a freestyle. And it was a freestyle because that's what I felt like it was giving, right? And so because I viewed it as a freestyle, I only put it out on SoundCloud. And before I started to heavily release my music on Apple, Spotify, right, I was very heavy. I had a very heavy presence on SoundCloud. So that was one of those SoundCloud exclusive type of songs. So my feelings are not hurt if you are not too familiar with Blunted, but that is Blunted. And so, again, if you are not familiar with it, you can still find it on my Bandcamp. And now we are about to get into Better, 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 featuring Drebo. Okay, so as I said, the next song that I released after that was Better, featuring Drebo. We have the same producer, which is Legendary P. Shout out to Legendary P. He produced this song, as he has a lot of the songs in my discography. And I don't know, like when I cut the record, I'm like, I hear Drebo on this, and I am a fan of Drebo. Shout out to Drebo. Make sure y'all go listen to his music if you like that LA bounce vibe, type of sound. Please go show Drebo some love. He killed this record. I had this song and I'm like, I feel like Drebo was perfect for this. I feel like he could add something to elevate this song. And that is exactly what he did. And so shout out to Drebo. I am so appreciative. And with that said, why did I feel like I needed to create this? / what do I hope listeners take away from it? It gets better. And then I put in my notes, things got worse immediately after, because I still wasn't intentionally walking with God, which is the key. Knowledge and kindness is key, right? But I felt good then. And so because that's how I felt, that's how Better came to be. And the next prompt is, are there any standout lyrics that capture this? And I said, the lyric that stands out to me in this song in particular is, fell in love with Miami, went and felt some better weather. And I wanted to touch on that because, like I said, I moved to Atlanta. But at one point, I actually wanted to move to Miami. And fun fact, Miami is the only city I've actually been to out of all of the other cities that I listed in that song. And as we are speaking about, moving and, traveling, right? A few people have asked me, would I ever move back to Atlanta? No, I would not. And that is another episode for another day. But I've already experienced Atlanta. So, I mean, Atlanta, it was great for the time I was there. But would I move back there? No. And again, that's another conversation for another day. I don't know where I would move to next, but I feel like since I've been back home and I've matured and I've, healed and I've actually gotten better, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, right? I'm actually thinking like I wouldn't mind still living in Indy and having Indy as a home base as long as I'm able to travel often, because you don't really have many distractions here in Indy. It's cheap to live here in comparison to a lot of other cities. And again, I'm from here, so I don't think I'm opposed to still having my hometown as my home base, as long as I am able to reach a level financially where I'm able to travel all the time. I don't think I would mind still being an indie, just as long as, I get to travel every few weeks, and especially in the wintertime, I don't got to be here. Yeah. I don't think I would actually mind like still staying in indie. So I don't know. I'm actually too just like in this place of, okay, as I'm intentionally walking with God, what does God want for me? Right. And so I don't know where I will move to next. Where I will move to next is not like the main thing on my mind, but also too, like I said, I don't know if I would actually want to move somewhere else as long as I'm in a position to be able to travel all the time. So I think the way in which I think in that regard has also changed. And again, I love what Drebo added and, how it spoke to him. I love just the flavor, that he added to it. I don't feel like it was a traditional hook verse, type situation. I feel like the energy that Drebo gave was more of like a bridge. I don't know, even though it was still a verse. And so I just love how, he took the record and he added to it what spoke to him to add. And then how does this song connect or contrast with the others in my discography? It's still a melodic sound for me. And it was a turn towards a lighter sound from me, if you will. And I thought that was important for me to know, because with introspection being a theme throughout my music, right? I personally have always felt like my music is very just like heavy and like, okay, girl, like, yeah, this is cool, but like, we not finna just turn this on all the time. And like, I felt that because like people was telling me they like my music, but I'm like, y'all not really playing my music though, And so me also too, always just viewing my music as, just an outlet for all of my heavy emotions, right? I feel like sonically too, my music has always felt very heavy, or at least that's how I view my music, right? And so around this time, I intentionally wanted to start making music that felt lighter, right? And so I'm like, I don't know if I was faking the funk, right? Because I wasn't feeling like drastically lighter, but like I remember at that time, like that's the vibe that I wanted to transition into. And I feel like around that time I was naturally feeling lighter, and so that's just how that song in particular came about. And that also gives context to sort of the direction that I was going in as it led to my album Kites, and we will get into that later as well. But That Is Better featuring Drebo. And the next song we finna get into is Ritz featuring Kyndl. Don't go nowhere. See how I did that? Okay, so boom. This is not one of my favorite songs that I have released. However, I do still love this song. And if I didn't love it, I wouldn't have released it. So let's get into it. What inspired this song? First and foremost, legendary P on the beat once again, right? And P, that's my brother. Like, that's family for real, right? And I remember around this time we was having conversations about the fact that I feel like he be giving these hard, like, knocking, like, bass thumping, like, trap type beats to everybody else, but he don't ever give one to me. And I'm like, do you think that I can't rap over this type of beat? Like, I was really feeling some type of way. And so I remember when I heard the beat for Ritz, right? I'm like, this beat is hard. I'm always looking for a challenge, right? I don't like when I feel like people are putting me in a box as an artist, especially other artists. Y'all be asking me for features and y'all be sending me these boom bap J Dilla type songs. And I love Dilla. My Midwest brother. Shout out to Dilla, right? But my point is, when I heard the beat for Ritz, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm probably not about to be in my typical bag with this one, which is why I'm not really a fan of the song, because it was, out of my comfort zone, out of my norm, right? But I love the song because it did get me in a different bag, right? And so that's essentially what inspired the song. And so long story short, I wrote to it, and the next prompt is, what is the message you're feeling behind it? It really was just me having fun without overthinking the lyrics. But as someone who is very introspective and I care about, the message and the subject matter, and right, like, that is why Ritz is not one of my favorite songs. Because I'm like, I wasn't really talking about nothing on this song. Fun fact, I actually almost did not release this song. But at this time, De'Aaron and I were really close. And I was playing him some unreleased music and he was like, this is hard. And I'm like, yeah, it's hard, but it's not really me. So I'm like, I don't know how I feel about putting out a song that I feel like is not really me. Right. And long story short, he convinced me to put it out. But I'm like, I'm only putting it out if you get on it. As I am a friend of other artists, right? Like, I can't be friends with you as an artist if I'm not genuinely a fan of you as an artist, right? And so as a friend, but also as a fan, I'm like, bro, I know that you would kill this song. So if you want me to put this song out, I'm only putting it out if you jump on it. And so he did, and he made me love the song even more. And so that is why the song ended up seeing the light of day. And with that said, what I hope that listeners take away from it is, don't take yourself too serious all the time, right? Like, now that I've, grown and I've matured, spiritually, right? Like, I'm now realizing, right, like, how important it is to actually have integrity as an artist, right? Like, okay, yeah, I'm able to make a song about anything, but do I need to release every song that I create? Probably not. But, if I had to give, a message or, a takeaway, don't take yourself too serious, especially as an artist, and collaborate with others. That's what art is about. A lot of the songs that I love that's in my discography are songs that I collaborated on with another artist. And also too, even though you're having fun and, getting out your comfort zone, still maintain integrity and stick to your intuition. But with that said, are there any standout lyrics that capture, the vibe of the song, or, just any standout lyrics that I love? And a lyric that stands out to me about this song is, I need a trophy or two, not a ribbon, Lil B. What's Pandora to that nigga wifey? As a rapper, we all want the trophies, the jewelry, the chains, right? Like, any rapper that tells you they don't want that, they're lying. They're lying. Even J. Cole had it at one point. Stop it. I just want me a nice little, a few little, you feel me? I ain't gonna be like Gucci with the Bart Simpson chain out here, with it. But, I want me a few cute little pieces, right? So that was me, manifesting a little bit, right? Like, okay, yeah, Pandora is out here, but like, again, you feel me? Just as a rapper, as an artist, like, once I get some money, like, I know I'm gonna wanna, you feel me, upgrade from the Pandora. So yeah, that's what that lyric was about. I love jewelry, and I do actually have somewhat of an expensive taste. So yeah, if y'all see me get some money and y'all see me with, you feel me, the chains and the, you feel me, just know I always wanted that. I'm real humble, I'm real calm, I'm real modest, but you feel me, the jewelry is gonna be that too, but it is gonna be a little bit of a, oh, okay, she got some money and do. Also, the last lyric that stood out to me when I was like reflecting on, this song in particular is, De'Aaron has a lyric where he says snakes in the grass, and then he then says capped, whatever he says after that, right? But I just know with that piece in particular, I wrote in my notes, snakes in the grass, ... cap. I don't know if it was intentional or not. It probably wasn't, but I would like to believe that it was intentional, even if it was subconsciously, right? I feel like that's a nod and a callback to my previous work. I have a project called Chaotic. That was the very first project that I put out, And on that project, I have a song called Snakes in the Grass. And then, like I said, the year prior, I dropped the EP titled Capped. So reflecting on the lyrics, I was like, that's kind of cool. You know, snakes in the grass. Yeah. So I was like, that's dope.